What if I told you that becoming a better photographer doesn't mean learning necessarily your subjects, how to pose, how to frame, and all of that? It's not necessarily paying attention to your subject, but paying attention to everything around your subject. What if I told you that? Would you agree with me? Well, whether you do or not, this is a tool that photographers, seasoned photographers, do very, very well. And that is to not only look at the subject, but to look behind and around the subject. I find myself personally, whenever I'm shooting people, looking at the scene around them more than them. I can pose them, I can set them up, I can get them fixed, no problem. But it's the scene around them that can make or break your photos. So today we're going over something a little bit different. I'm going to show you several photos that aren't quite right, that have something a little bit wrong with them. And rather than using Photoshop or Lightroom, which you can do, but rather than using them, how could I have fixed what isn't right prior to taking the photo to make, one, editing less stressful, and two, to become a better photographer rather than more tedious editor. So I'm going to show you a photo, and I'm going to give you a few seconds to pick out what could be wrong, what could be fixed prior to taking that picture. It's kind of like a photo game that's going to make you a better, faster, sharper photographer in the end. You ready? Let's get started. Just as a quick note, the studio is a disaster right now because we're completely renovating it and changing things up and all that. So completely ignore back there. Just focus right here, you and me right now, you and me. My name is Will. Welcome back to the channel. As discussed, we are going to, by the end of this video, make you a better photographer. Now, just as a quick side note, because this video has the tendency to bring out the best in the YouTube viewers. So I'm going to preface this entire video by saying that all of this is 100% subjective, meaning photography is an art, and where there are guidelines and things that help make photos better, these can be broken, these can be changed, these can be altered, these can be completely ignored. That is totally fine. This is just a few things that I have found personally that has made my photography more interesting, better, and more likable. Now, whether you use this or not is totally up to you, but I think it will help. So let's find out, shall we? Photo number one. What do you see that could be fixed, reframed, changed, removed, altered, whatever? Take a second, see what you can pick out. The first error is the floor mat under their feet. The second error is the lights behind her head coming out of her head. And the third is the AC unit at the top of the photo. All of these can be remedied. Firstly, you can reframe the photo so it's lower, and that way you can get the floor mat out without actually having to remove it. You can adjust them so the lights aren't going out of her head fully. And third, you can remove the air conditioning by reframing, or you could just remove it in post. Now, that's totally up to you. The AC is a kind of a difficult one considering it's right there. But here's the photo reframed. So the first thing I did was I went to a lower angle. That way the floor mat is not in it. I adjusted the trees, so the trees kind of block the AC unit, even though you can still see it there. I could just remove it in post, but fine. And third, I reframed it so the lights are not coming out of her head. Now, in this case, in editing, I would remove the lights and the AC unit altogether. But it's important to look around the edges of your subjects before you take that picture. Now, here's the second photo. Now, despite the background being blown out and all, I want you to really look at this photo and find what pulls your attention immediately. What really, really bothers you? Did you get it? If you said the palm tree sticking out of his head, you are absolutely right. This is probably the most common thing that I notice in photos because people don't look at the back, behind, or around the subject's head, and you find trees coming out of their heads randomly, posts, light posts, all kinds of random things sticking out of the subject's head. Now, this is an easy fix. All you have to do is simply readjust your frame or readjust your subject, and you handle these random things sticking out of people's heads. But here's the edited photo. Obviously, dulled down the highlights a little. Don't worry about that. But you can see we handled the tree. All right, third photo. This one should be relatively easy for you to spot the problem. If you said the flowers on the right side behind the window, you are absolutely right. The The flowers are totally wrong for this. No, just kidding. Obviously, it's the car. And bonus points if you said that the whole frame is crooked as well. That's just my problem. I have a crooked tilt to my frame. However, the car is absolutely hideous. And the sad part is it's actually my car, which makes it even worse. Now, how can you fix this? Again, reframing. So here's the adjustment. I moved to the right, I angled down a little bit, and I actually think this is a way more appealing photo and way more cinematic photo for her, and the car is no longer there. Hooray. Also, the flowers are gone too, which is kind of a bummer. I like the flowers. But the car, that's specifically the car, is gone, which is really nice. Now, if you feel like you have your shooting side down, or you're getting your shooting side nailed down, and you're having trouble editing, you should check out my Lightroom Master of Editing course where I go over everything you need to know about editing in Lightroom. I go over every basic panel, I go over full edits, tips, tricks, everything. Everything is in there that I personally know to help you edit like a pro. So I'll link it in the description. Go check it out after the video. Now the next photo, here it is an interesting one. I want you to tell me if you can spot what's wrong. Now this one specifically is not super wrong. It's more of a point of composition and how you like to do it. This is one of those guidelines that is constantly broken because it's not that big of a deal. But other than the people in the background, which you just edit them out because sometimes it's just impossible to avoid people, you could also just move over, but in this case, fine. That's not what I'm talking about though. If you said the horizon is going through his head, then you are absolutely right. Because theoretically and guideline-wise, you don't want a horizon going through the subject's head or neck or anything like that because it gives the feeling of a cut-off look. Now, here's the photo without it. This is a different framing. Obviously, I'm shooting a little bit higher, but it makes the photo less broken up. The subject is full, the horizon goes across the image. You can frame the horizon to be on the rule of thirds rather than directly in the center. And if you do that, you can kind of fill up the image a little bit more and give it a more aesthetic look. Now, this is kind of subjective again, because a lot of times you have the horizon behind the couple, but that's totally up to you and how you want to take your photos. I always try to work the horizon correctly, but sometimes in the spirit of the moment, it's just not workable. And I've never had someone say, oh, I don't like those photos because the horizon is going through my neck or my head. Not once has a client ever said that to me. As a personal preference, I do prefer this to this, but again, it's not a make or break. Okay, this one is the next one. What is wrong with this one? It's a little bit trickier, but let's see if you can spot it. And no, it's not the horizon going through his head because we already talked about that. It's something different. Did you figure it out? If you said they are cut off at the ankles, you are absolutely correct. This, again, is one of those subjective ones that can be broken for an interesting take on the photo, I guess. But personally, I don't like to do this. I don't like to cut them off like this because it looks way better when you can see them in full. You can see the body, nothing is cut. You don't feel like you're following the body down and then all of a sudden it stops and you're like, bah, why am I stopped? But don't cut off hands, feet, or parts of the subject because it can make the photo feel kind of awkward. Just simply stepping back, reframing, or just adjusting the way you're shooting can make a huge difference in the photo without making the photo feel awkward. Now here's the trickiest one of them all. What is wrong with this one? And why is this one tricky? Because nothing's wrong with this photo. It is perfect. It is amazing. I absolutely love this photo. If you said there was something wrong, then there's something wrong with you. No, but the reason I bring this photo to attention is because there's almost something wrong with this photo. There's two things that I would actually correct in this, and that is, one, you have a little bit of extra negative space on the left-hand side that's kind of unnecessary, and something to be aware of is branches, grass, trees, or something coming in the foreground or in front of the subject. In this case specifically, you can see the grass is crossing over their faces. Now, it works for this photo, but there are some times that I've taken photos of, say, a family or kids or something like that, and I tried to do the similar effect, and the grass goes right across the baby or kid's face, and it doesn't look good. It just makes the subject look blurry or out of focus. So that is something to pay attention to. And sometimes when you're taking those low to the ground photos through grass, you don't see the blade of grass going over the lens because it's so blurry and so close. And then you get into editing and you're like, why does their eye or why does their nose look blurry? So it's very important to pay attention to this. In this case, all I would simply do is crop in a little. They're perfectly aligned to the rule of thirds, and the grass itself is not blocking specifically any major subject point, making it hard to see. Because there's enough of the grass, it looks amazing. This is one of my favorite photos I've ever taken. It's absolutely amazing. It's beautiful. They look great. The scene looks great. Everything looks great. But on negative space, it's important to remember, because here we had to crop out some of the negative space, that the negative space must make sense. For example, here's a photo of a lot of negative space. It makes sense. Compositionally, they're framed on the rule of thirds, and the negative space makes sense because you're like, oh, wow, that's pretty, and then your attention goes to them. So this is important because, for example, like this photo, it's not great. Not only is it not straight to the horizon, but it's also awkwardly framed. Yes, they're on the rule of thirds, but the negative space doesn't make sense. It does. There's too much awkward amount of leg. There's too much awkward slant. It doesn't make sense. So if you reframe, crop, and adjust, then you get them center framed, which makes more sense. Now the horizon is straight. They're framed properly in the center of the frame, covering from bottom left to top right. And there's less negative space because they're the subject of the full image. So you're not distracted by the background. So that is just a quick note on negative space because it does make a big difference using it correctly. And that was the last image, but I want to make one final note. I personally, if you follow my videos, if you watch my videos, you know that I talk constantly about my heavy lean to the left. I don't know why, but every time I take photos, even though I use the grid and the level and all that, I tend to always push up on my camera and I always have a crooked horizon. This is the biggest thing that I have seen when I've been in photography groups and beginner photographers, even professional photographers, is the fact that they aren't cropped straight. Now, the only time your images shouldn't be straightened out is if you're doing it for a style. And here's an example of photo of that. This is a movement photo. She's running through the weeds. It's slightly tilted, not too much to make it awkward, but it kind of gives a motion feel. This is really the only time that I have found that having a crooked horizon or an unstraight photo makes sense. Even if there's a little bit of blur around her, motion blur, something like that, it's the only time it makes sense. Some people will go completely against what I'm saying here, and that's okay too. This is my personal opinion. But when someone posts a photo and I see a photo, the first thing I notice is whether or not that horizon is straight or not. And if it's not, does the photo need a straightened photo? And 9 out of 10 times, yes, the horizon needs straightened. That's the first thing I do every time I'm going to edit a photo. I see a photo, I'm like, I'm going to edit that photo. First thing, straighten the horizon. Then I go into editing. So now I want to know, are there some mistakes that you've caught yourself doing? Are there things that you're doing that you shouldn't be doing, or finding yourself editing out a little bit too much in post-processing? If so, comment below what your biggest mistake is. And if you've got your own little photo shoot blooper, I'd love to hear it, and maybe I'll feature you in a video. You never know. And if you really want to upgrade your editing skills after you've nailed your shooting side, don't forget to check out my Lightroom Master of Editing course, which is Lightroom everything. Literally, you can do my course and you will know how to expertly edit in Lightroom. I'll link it in the description, so go check it out. But thanks for playing along today. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Here's 2 videos you should go check out. I think you're gonna like them. But otherwise, hope you had fun. See you in the next video.